All right, Devils, how we doing today? Happy Saturday. Well, it's Saturday the 15th of June. Now, as many of you know, as I've been communicating with members, this is a take two on the Bitcoin update that we would typically do on Friday, but the bullish action that we've had coming really in the last 24 hours has blown up a few counts and created a lot of uncertainty here. So I'm going to do the best I can here to kind of walk you through where I think we are. I will tell you that if you're here looking for the next trade, I don't think we're at a place where you can have enough conviction in where we are in this count to where there is a trade setting up right now at the moment. So, right, there may be a short video you could leave now if you're looking for a trade. Now, if you're into solving the puzzle of the Elliott components here and staying with rule set, well, you know, that kind of, you either love it or you hate it, right? So this is very much open to interpretation as we are here. And in fact, as I often remind you guys, I do not consider myself whatever count I would propose to you as the definitive count. I often will check with my senseis. In fact, today I've been back and forth with Arixis, who members you'll know how good he is, and he and I are back and forth on trying to come up with a count here that fits. Right? So this is really challenging. So the one thing that I will tell you that is just consistent process, if you will, for me, if I'm really confused about where we are in an Elliott count, I will strip the chart bare. I've told you guys this many times. I'll strip it bare and just start from the daily and try and get some sense as to where we are. And my first priority is always look for what's the simplest answer. Because often that will be what ends up as we resolve out of this section here that's making it so difficult to get a clear count on it. Often it's the most simple answer, right? We complicate it by trying to come up with all sorts of accommodation to fit the rule set, but usually, not always, but usually the simplest thing is the answer. So in the spirit of just starting here and looking, okay, what can I see? Where are we? Can I make any definitive conclusion about what an algorithm has done last? And as I look here, we've been through this a couple of times here. We know we've broken through the 65 here off of this last pivot that was technical relative to this pivot. So we go back one. Now, a couple things to note here. So we ran into this structure here, this prior low. Potentially now that's giving us the resistance here. We aren't right at a fib level here, so it's certainly easy to look and anticipate, well, the 50 would be up ahead. So if we're going to resolve here higher and take out that pivot here, I should note I'm on Binance to the dollar tether, as that's where the higher volume is. So as we sit here looking at that pivot at 9,072, so you have to be prepared for, well, let me phrase it this way. You need an alternate that would allow for this pivot to be broken, right? So if it holds, a few alternates stay alive. If it breaks, some of them are eliminated. So thus my earlier statement that we aren't at a place where there's a trade sitting here that's developing that I can just put in your lap and say, oh, well, okay, we can buy it here and put a stop here. It's just too unclear. But so again, we're back to either you love the challenge of that or you could care less and you're just waiting for the next trade. So but I'm going to assume, particularly members here, that we're looking for an Elliott count here that will accommodate. So recognizing that certainly now the bias would appear to be higher, and this pivot is going to be critical. Well, so we're sitting here less than $300 away from taking that out. So as I record this, we can invalidate one or two of these accounts as I'm recording. But right now, I think it's reasonable to assume that the next move here has us we're going to challenge this pivot, right? We're close enough to where bulls can look at that and say, well, there's going to be a shitload of stops there. Well, not necessarily bulls, right? Anyone looking at the chart knows that, well, there are going to be stops there, right? So those stops potentially are the fuel, right? As those shorts have to cover, that as they buy to cover, that can be the fuel that would get us up here to the 50, which seems to be a reasonable target if we are indeed going to break that high. All right, so let's try and simplify. So the simplest thing is really the count that we've been kind of showing here and advocating here is well, there's a 3 up here somewhere, there's a 4, and there's a 5, right? Now, where the 3 is what's making this interesting. Okay, so the 1, 2, I think we can agree here. And if anybody is still looking at this move here and thinking that this is corrective, you can also leave now, because that will not be part of the alternates that we're discussing. If you think that this is corrective and we're going down to challenge 3,200 and head down towards 1,000 or 1,800 or whatever your dreams of being able to buy Bitcoin at that level, right? We are not going to discuss that, because I think there is almost zero possibility that's where we are, and that's what's likely to happen. I'm not saying it can't happen. I just think that's the low. I think it would be a waste of time here. So until we are breaking down hard, I'm going to stay away from that count, because I don't think that's what's happening. I wouldn't want to counsel you on something I don't think is in play. So I am absolutely certain that we are in an impulse. The bigger question now is, where's the 3? Right? So let's go down to a 4-hour. Okay, let me get out of log here. That was in that for a reason. Okay, so let's just look at this. So here's what's making it difficult here. So really, I'm going to push these up here, because I am not sure where that 3rd is yet. Some of these pump wicks are making this really difficult. So let's see, let me open it up even further. Bear with me a sec. Okay, so this is what's making this so difficult, because it can be interpreted a couple of different ways. I guess I got to get that click higher. Okay, so as you look at this, there are a few spots where it looks it's fairly easy. All right, so sorry guys. All right, let's try again. Okay, so the ABC here, pretty solid, right? I think we can agree that that's corrective. Now, the problem we have here is coming off of this, is that this, I guess I can take that off. This can be interpreted a couple of different ways. So if you just look at the pivot highs and the lows, it's not unreasonable to see 3 there. Not unreasonable, right? It's from the low here, you can definitely, so now I'm blocking it here. So we can definitely get 5 into this from this low. 1, 2, 3, 4. Yeah, I know the 5's a little skinny. Now I'm on a 4-hour, maybe 2-hour, make this easier. 1, 2, 3, 4. Yeah, it's a stretch in the 5. I hear you. I see the same thing. So as you look at that, it's hard not to be leaning into 5 here. So as we come up here, the 1, 2, all right, I'm obviously way too big a degree here. This, let's go down, go sub. This 5, as we look at all the possible scenarios here, this seems fairly solid, as does the 3 that follows it. So just trying to go one swing at a time, right? Let's see if we can get this just working through it. A-B-C. So this looks solid, and as you'll recall, this is technical. So from the low here. Oh, I've got the. Hang on a second. We're gonna use that in a minute. So if I go back to just a straight algo pull. Okay, swing low. We come right to the 618. All right, and we come up now. We stutter at first target. Front run on second. It's hard to say. Right? We never really know. That's what I would guesstimate here, is that we come up close enough to the second algo target and profit is taking. So with that established, so you're looking at that going, okay, well, I've got 5 and I've got 3. Okay, well, coming off of this. Now, again, it's a little bit open to interpretation, because you can see a couple of different things here. This could be 3, 4, and 5. Okay, so if I've got 5, 3, 5, it's pretty easy to look at that and saying, oh, okay, well, I've got just a clear zigzag, right? Now we've been through this as one of the alternates in other videos. So let's go back here. So it's that's not unreasonable to think, okay, I got an ABC coming off of that. So I can make a case for 5 down here. You can go A, B, C. So the 5 that's coming down here, the 5 that's so obvious is right here. Right? That's clear, right? We just did that, right? So you can get the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, even though the 5's a little skinny. Well, the 5, 3, 5 here looks pretty solid. So that has you wondering, wait a minute, am I still in a correction where potentially I've got an expanded B wave here? So here would be the 3, A, B, C into an A, B, C into a B. Now, all right, this is where it gets difficult. This whole section here is incredibly difficult to get a clear count on, because we have, in trying to stay with consistency with Elliott rule set, the subdivision here is just a bear. So if we pull back out on this and on the idea that we've got an A wave, so sorry, and we've gone ABC, we've got a zigzag into a B wave here, well, then we'd be coming down. Is this a candidate for the C? All right, so we'd have A, B, C. Well, you can get there, but it's not pretty. So we can get a 1, we can get a 2. Now, I can definitely get 5 into this low here. Right? So the impulse that's internal is certainly there. But I can get it a couple of different ways. So if this is the 3, and then I'm going to go A, B, C into my 4 here, and then come down, I got to truncate the 5. Right now, well, it's a little different exchange to exchange. So note here as well. So we would have to turn this into a diagonal, right, because of the overlap of the 1. So this move down here is creating much of the problem, because it eliminates this as a possibility here. All right, so, well, it's not that it eliminates it, it eliminates an impulse. So even if you were looking at it this way, all right, if you were trying to get it this way, same problem. So now, so you can look here and go, oh, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So let's put the 3 back down here. All right, let's put the 4 here. Now we got to truncate the 5 here. Right, so that we can stay with an impulse to avoid the overlap of the 1. Okay, so if that's coming down as, if we've got A, B, C here, now, so what's the alternate that would allow for this 5? If the A, B, C is in, well, that would imply we're at a larger degree going A, B. All right, now where? Right, if this is A, B, let's just put it down here and take it up a degree. Let's go, we'll go to minuet here, and we'll go into blue. Okay, so larger degree, A, zigzag into a B. I've got something here, but it's not there is no clean 5 waves coming down here that I can be definitive about. Either I truncate here, either I accommodate an overlap here, and rationalize it. Oh, okay, well, we got just a free fall wick that it invalidates here, right? So do I want to allow for that? Well, if I can avoid it, I'd prefer to avoid that. So if this is the A, this is the B, could we be done here as the C? Well, yeah, we could, right? Of course. It would be a bit, it would certainly be unusual for this to be the 4. Oh, shit. I guess I got to pull out here to get those. All right, so let's consider that. Okay, is that a possibility here? That we've got A, B, and we've come down for the C. So we have this odd shape here. So we go A, B, and we've come down for the C. Now we're off to catch the 5. Can't eliminate that possibility. Now, there is one rule, Elliott rule set here, or guideline here, and so this is why I had the reverse on. So let me put this on. Now, per Elliott Wave rule set here, this is what's making a problem here. So this is the, so in green here. So if you let's take this off here so you can see it. Let's hide that. Okay, we'll bring that back. So here's the 1, 2, 7, 2. Pardon me. Here's the 1, 2, 3, 6. The 1, 3, 8, 2, and the 1, 4, 1, 4. Now that's as far, it's guideline, right? That's as far as you can allow for an expanded B wave. Now we do get this 1 wick that goes through. So note here we get 3, 8. All right, are we going to get there again? Now, if this shoots up higher again, then we have to invalidate this. It's too far, right? So let me try and put it in context. So if this is A and we're going to allow for this going higher here, and we're going to allow for the one wick that goes through the 414, well, then we'd be leaning into the idea that we had A, B, C, and we've had a very, very shallow 4 relative to the 2. And it would also be much shorter in time frame. So this is, let's look at it this way. Okay, so this is a 2-month 2. So we go from December 18th approximately to January. Oh, pardon me. This is a 1 month. Okay, so we go from, our pivot here is December 24th, and our pivot low here is January 28th. So a little over a month. Now, our low here, so the A wave would be May 19th, and we'd be putting in the low here June 19th. So actually, they're not too far off. So this, I got a month here. I've got about a month here. If this is going to go up here, and that's the 4, then we have to look at it this way. So this would be a 4. So let me change this, get this back on. So we'll go back to our 2 low, up to our proposed 3 high. Right, so that's going to put our 4, come here, if we're going to finish this as A expanded B, allowing for the extension in that B and coming down for the 4 here, well then we're off to the races here, and we're seeking the 5. All right, so again, we're accommodating a very shallow 4. Now, the algo target, so there's not an algorithm there, so we'd have to be using a different metric here. So we're not going to use an algo from not even to the 23, but we could look at some other pivots here as potential. But right now, you would have to use something more aligned with something more traditional Elliott Wave relationship. So you'd take the length of the 1 projected from the low of the proposed 4, and here would be a reasonable target, right? If we're going to stay ultra bullish, if we're in an impulse now, coming up to the 2618, the length of the 1 projected from the 4, so that would be 10250. Right? So that's not an unreasonable projection here for the 5, and is accommodating this unusual price action that we're having in this section, which is all we're just really, you could make the same case here that we're just building a box of support here, right? So for bulls, this is potentially now it's quite positive because we're building, now if I put this back on, we're building a base of support here, right? So it's not huge yet, but it's growing, right? So you can see here as we build this base of support, as we hover in this range. So let's use the low end of 7,000, the high end of 9,000. So we have this 2K range where we're building a base. So if we're going to go up, 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 this will potentially now, depending on how far this goes, this will be an area that we can look to for some support. So let me pull this off here and let's dig into this subdivision. You'll see some of the things that we're dealing with. So at the moment, all right, so I've got several alternates. At the moment, I think this is the most reasonable. All right, let me say it this way. This would be my primary count. All right, that we've gone A, expanded B. I'm going to allow for that pump wick that went beyond the 414, right? I know purists are going to be upset with that, but I think this fits better. So I get the 4 down here, so I avoid the having to force a diagonal here. Now, of course, we can just look at this and see that the 2 relative to the 4 is not ideal. And what you're dying to do is put the 4 up here, right? You're dying to do it. So, but now you run into, now we got to turn this into a diagonal, right? So the alternate is, as if I stay with this count here, that we've now got a 1, 2 here. So if I keep this as is, 4 is in through that expanded B wave, right? So this 3, 3, 5. All right, so A, B, C, A, B, C. Pardon me. So we'd have 3, 3, and so the A, B, C, the double zigzag is the B wave. Right, so this is our zigzag in the B wave, and then we finished with the 5 here, allowing for this shitty 5. So if we stay with that, now I'm going to go down to the 2 hour. If we stay with that, now this is where, again, it gets very tricky here. So from the 1, from this pivot here, if that's a 1, and we've gone into a 2, well, now I got to get a 3, 4, and 5 up here. So let's get that degree up. Let's go. We can go here. We'll go minuet just to make it easy to see. And we'll change the color here. Let's go to green. Okay. So first problem. All right. Can we really dig a 1 out of there? Oh, I don't want log. I want auto. Okay. So let's look at it. Okay. Can I get a 1 into that? Well, it's not pretty. So let's zoom in there even more. Okay, so you got to dig a 1 out of that. Well, the 4, 5 looks decent. So you got to go 1, 2. It's again, I know you're just making do with the best you've got here. So you've got to go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Let's get that down, and we'll go in blue here. Bear with me. Okay, so we've got to get some sort of an ugly impulse. Well, pardon me, it wouldn't need to be an impulse. We've got to get a motive wave in here to give us a 1. Okay, so I think that's not unreasonable. 3, 4. Here's the C. 1, 2. You're making do with the best that you've got here. So then you look at it and you go, really? Can you get an impulse? If we're going to stay with an impulse, can I get an impulse in that third? It's shaky, no question about it. Even down to the 15, it's shaky. Can we? If this is the 1, 2, can I really get right from here? If this is the 4. Right, so it's the 1, 2 that yet again, the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 of the third. So this has to be your 4. So working backwards, this has to be your 3. It's not great. Right, so you're kind of stuck with making do with what you've got to work with. So what's the alternate that we have? You know, does it play? It doesn't really play as a diagonal because there's nothing that overlaps anywhere. Right, so I can't get a diagonal in here. So I've got to just work with what I've got, knowing that if this count starts to break down, this is often what I'll do. I will just highlight this going, this is a problem section. Right? It's not clear what's happening in there. At some point they all break down, right? We can't go down to the 1 minute and then the 10 second. They're going to break down at some point. Now, is this would be the point of caution in this count, that 3 is suspect. Well, it's beyond suspect. It's barely there. All right. So, but I got to label it as something. So if I'm going to stay with the idea that I've got my pivot in here, well, can I get a 2 wave here that's legit? Right. I'm already having to compromise a bit on the 1 wave. Well, I think this is not unreasonable here. All right, so we can get the ABC into this, and I can get a 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, all solid down here. Now I've got to go into, so this looks like I've got to do it this way. So from here, looks like I've got to go, this has got to be 1, 2. All right, so let me just put these up here. And let's bring that degree up. Micro. Okay, so I've got to get a 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So again, this is just the harsh reality of it. You're being forced to compromise along the way. So coming out of here, I got to go 1, 2, 3, 4 and finish with a diagonal there, which is not pretty. All right, I see it. I understand. I'm dealing with the same thing you are. Okay, so here's the 1, 2, 3. I got to get just. I can barely get it there. So you can't go 1, 2. So you got, oh, Jesus, that is really, yes, I'm on a 15-minute. You got, it's just barely there. So you're having to dig it out here. So that you can't go 1, you can't go 1, 2, 3, 4 because the 4 overlaps the 2. So you've got to do it as, oh, Jesus, barely there. You may have to put the 4 here and run it as an A, B, C, and then you're going to, oh boy, this is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. It's just, again, it's making do with what you've got there. It's really, really tough to get that to play, but it's lesser of the evils. I think this is better as a 1, 2 here. Now, it looks like we get, okay, so now it becomes a question of, all right, back off a second. Okay, 1, 2, do I have an impulse in here? Well, if I do, what's my 3, 4 going to be? All right, so let's wick this off. So this needs to be, let's see, that's a prior pivot. Okay, so I'm going to pull that off just for the time being. Okay, so let's use this as the 1 for lack of a better. option. All right, so here's the 1. So I come down to the tick here. Right, so I'm looking at this going, okay, that's a candidate. Immediately that draws my eye to this as a potential 4 because of the fact that we don't overlap here. Now I got to get an impulse there, right? So if it's not going to overlap, well, then what's the alternate, right? That means I've got to get an impulse here, and you're once again. It's just not there. So you have to look at this and go, okay, I cannot force fit an impulse into that. It is just not there. I can't go 1, 2, 3, 4. It's not an impulse. I can't go 1, 2, 3. Right? Again, if it's a diagonal, I need to overlap. So I go, okay, that can't work. So I got to push this up a little bit and say, okay, maybe the 5's over here. Come here. The 4 is over here, and I've got something else. God damn TradingView, that's so fucking annoying. Sorry, guys, that just annoys the shit out of me every time I do this. Okay, 1, 2. Can I get an impulse here? Well, so again, we keep coming into these sections where there's a problem, right? So we can't quite get it to fit. If that's 1, 2, can I go 3, 4, 5? Right, I don't like to go below the 15-minute, but we may have no choice here. So we save the impulse because the 4 doesn't overlap here. All right, so I think we have to look at this and go, it's just not, there's not an impulse there. So I think we have to turn it into a diagonal, right? So this is, I have a reason for going through this, right? We're going to get there. So I think we have to turn this either into, it's a WXY or it's a double zigzag, which Rixus was suggesting to me. So let's consider that. So I could have ABC, ABC, ABC. So if we're going to stay with a diagonal, this would put the 3 up here. Right, so now, okay, so let's go with that. So let's stay with the WXY, right? So this is kind of what we were struggling through this morning. If this is a WXY, okay, let's go down to micro. Okay, so then maybe I've got, so I could have a double zigzag here into the 3, but then so here, at least on Binance, I got a problem here. It doesn't overlap. Where does it overlap? Here. So now I kind of come back to this and I go, okay, maybe I have that wrong. Maybe this is an ABC. So now I start to come to it. I'm kind of just taking you through the process we went through this morning. So maybe this is ABC. All right, so I've got a contender for a diagonal here. So let's go down to micro. Oh, let's change our color. Let's go to green. Actually, let's go down 1. Let's go to sub. Okay, so now I got to put the 1 over here, right? Because to allow for the overlap, because I can't get an impulse in here. So as this is climbing, you keep looking for the impulse, going, okay, look at Bitcoin, rip, rip, rip. Where's the impulse? Can't get it. All right, so 1, 2, now 3. All right, so if I can go into the 3 here, 4, is this the 5? All right, let's look at that. All right, so that's going to require, so this would have to be the 4 to give me the overlap that I need for the diagonal. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Again, what's the problem there? Well, obviously we'd have an incredibly shallow 2. All right, so if that's 1 through 5 and that's giving me a new 1 wave, well, I gotta live with a 2 that's only going to it was not even making the 23.6. Right? If you've got a better alternate, I'd like to see it. I don't think I can't get impulses in here. They're just not there. So I tried to force fit it here, and so I just took you through the process of how I ended up getting back here because we don't overlap. So if this is my 2, and then so at the next degree, I'd be going up here, and this would be a 1. You gotta call it something. So let's put these up here. Let's take that degree. We'll go to subminuet. Okay, so now we're looking at this as a contender, knowing that here's my problem spot. So I'll do the same thing here. All right, just to remind myself, this is iffy. All right, I don't love that. That's very unusual, right? Dramatically unusual for 2 to be that shallow. Now, is it just a function of the incredibly strong demand for Bitcoin? I'm pulling this all back out here. If this is 1, 2, well, there's a couple of the things we can do. So as soon as we get a 1, 2, we can do a few things. Okay, so let me pull this off here. Okay, if I've got a 1, 2, well, first thing I'm going to do is work with that 1 from my 2. I'm going to look for high probability zones. Well, here's my wave 3 probability zone. We're already 2 and through that. So could we be going to the 2, 6, 1, 8? Well, it's certainly a candidate. Now, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2. All right, so I've got my 2 problem spots identified. Well, clearly we've got an opportunity with 3 pivots like this to get a set of median lines on here. All right, so let's bear with me a second. We'll get right on these. It's a little tricky at first. All right, it's always sometimes a good idea to use the magnet tool. So if this is my 1, this is the lower low right there. Okay, so let's pull back out. All right, so again, so obvious conclusion here, we're not to the median line yet. So as this continues to carry on, this is a very reasonable target. Now note what that would be. That's the prior high. So if we're going to go 1, 2, do I have an impulse now? Well, now it looks like I can get an impulse. Finally, after all of this, I can finally get an impulse in here. So as I come from this low, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And I can get a little impulse in the third. So now it's starting to come together. Okay, so I'm working backwards now a little bit. Okay, so let's go down to submicro. Oh shit, what have I not used there? Okay, we'll leave it in white. Okay, so 1, 2. 1, 2, I know, right? It ain't pretty. 3, we're seeking the third. So what would that be the third of? So this is 1, 2, no, pardon me. All right, I got it. So this is why you change degrees and you change colors. All right, so let me put this. So I'm going to do that right now. I'm going to put that in a different color. Let's go to, we'll go to yellow. Okay, so this would be, right, so you see here, this is the 1, 2 here. Now I've got 5, I've got an impulse going up. I'm seeking the third at this degree. So from this here it is. Okay. From this low, I've gone 1, 2, seeking the 3, 4, 5. So if I take that off, you'll see the very difficult issue with the 2. It's just very uncharacteristic for a 2 to be that shallow relative to the 1. It's not that it's never happened before. It doesn't invalidate the count. It's unusual. So let's leave it at that. But again, working through this, I think this is our best bet here, right? But with these acknowledged, if we start to break down, that's the first place you go back and say, okay, maybe I have this wrong. Then you got to work through it, kind of working backwards. Once we get more reveal from the market up here, this will be easier to qualify and quantify once we see what we end up, how high we're going. Do we start to are we ever going to get any sort of significant correction here? So for right now, the anticipation would be that the next stop will be the median line, right? So we have a corner pocket here, 80% probability of making that median line. So if we make the median line, what does that give us? Well, we're not, right? So here is potentially our 3, 4, 5. We'd be just seeking the third at this degree. So that we're not looking for a tag of the median line to be the top. In fact, we're just looking for that to be a pivot, potentially, for the third at this degree. So maybe a move back to the median line for the larger degree third, which would be relative to this 1, 2. So let's measure that. So 1, 2. Okay, here's the 2, 6, 1, 8. So we can kind of use that as a reasonable target up here for the third at that degree. 1, 2. Let's put it in that range. That would be 92.39. So we'd be through the prior high. We'd have our 3. So we have our 3, 4, push up for the 5, but we're not done yet. All right, so that would set up the 4, 5, which puts us higher. So we're trying to get this to complete. So from here, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Now that has symmetry that I can live with. That's not bad. Right, so that looks pretty solid, pretty typical. It's the subdivision that's been so difficult, right? It's just very, very unusual. So from this, right, so if this is my 4, so the premise is, per my primary, I don't want this video to be too terribly long, it's the premise in my primary, right? And if needed, we'll come back and we'll look at an alternate, but the premise as it relates to a primary count, is that the 4 is in, and we don't know if we're in the 1 wave of the 5th or we're trying to finish the 5th. Well, if you step way back out and say, well, what does that look reasonable? That this is 1, 2, and we're going to finish the 5 up here. Let's just use that 2618 as a target. It's not crazy, right? So again, we kind of again back to the same thing before. 1 length of the 2 projected from the do I have it? I'm gonna have to dig in there. From the 4, let me get that because I can't see it. I know you can't either. Okay, scrunch this up. Come here. So from the 4 low, get it right on there. Okay, so let me pull back out now. Where would that have us? Okay, so that puts us up here at 10,152. If we're going to go to the 2618, the length of the 1 projected from the proposed 4. So A, B, C into the 4. We're seeking the 5th right now of the 1 off of the low at 3,200. That's my best guesstimate as to where we are. Now, there are definitely some alternates that could play based on how this resolves. But I think this is our best bet. And again, I will remind you that again, it's kind of the same issue here because there is no perfect count. This is your, so we could kind of do the same thing here. If I take that little ellipse here and say problem spot, right? That's a question mark. Question mark here because of the wick through the 414. Right, because of what's followed, I'm going to allow for it in this count. It's not, we don't invalidate there with that 1 wick, but we're certainly on the edge of it. So I think that's our best bet right now. So still seeking, so the next big tell is, can we get through the prior resistance here, the prior pivot high, right? As we recall, that was tied to this swing low. If I get it right on there, sorry. So as we come up and we're ready to challenge that, can we get through it? And then are we all ultimately the whole thing just setting up what we would anticipate for a larger correction? So let's get back here. So then we'd be, if we're going to, so again, I don't have the pivot here, obviously, right? So if we're going to get a wave 5 up here to complete this move off the low to give us a completed impulse for a 1 wave that will then if the correction is going to come, this is the area we'd be looking for it, right? That's between, so let's call it, 6,700 to 5,790. Right? If we're going to get a true 1, so you'd be anticipating at some point, right? It's not inevitable. I try to remind you that we'll get something like that. There will be something that will cause a correction here that will get us down into more typical wave 2 range. And then that kind of, again, as we've talked about before, oh shit, I can't do it on 4. Let me go to an 8. All of this where we spent so much time working through that as we stayed there before the breakdown to come back into this range. Here, I'm just kind of making it as large as I can. Or we could do it, you could look at it this way and say back to this range of market acceptance if we want to do it that way instead. Right, well, we built that base. Well, look where the 50 is. It would be right on the edge of it. Right, and then if that sets up, that's by the decade. All right, so man, that's 38 minutes. I know, long-winded here, but this required a lot of detail work, and this count is, it's my current primary. God, I have multiple alternates in here tied to variations in how this resolves here. So, which is a good practice, right? It's a good idea to have multiple. So I keep account with the idea that the 1 is already in, right? So, but again, I'm on 40 minutes in here, so I don't want to ramble on longer than I already have. But so if I have to pick one, as I just took you through, I took that's my primary, right? So we'll revisit the alternates if we need to, if something unusual happens or something happens to violate this count. All right, so, and it certainly could happen, or if it's going to stay much more bullish, some things could change here. But right now, I think that's our odds-on favorite. Okay, guys, there you go. That's the best update I can do. It's, as I said to everyone who was working with me, that I hope you're long as hell. Okay, guys, talk to you.